Hello Warlords, Rodge here, back for another Saga Thursday, my friends. Your weekly Saga source. Today we got a battle report, another second edition battle report. We're playing Scots versus Anglo-Danes. This is a 4-point battle report, so it's not the full 6-point battle that we're probably typically playing, but wanted to see how it went at the lower point level. We didn't quite have enough time for a full game, and it's kind of a good test run and to see how these boards stack up at that lower point level. In the first edition, it was always kind of janky, didn't always quite feel as balanced as it did at 6 points, so yeah, let's give it a shot at 4. My opponent is Mr. Matt J. Jack. He's a local fella, and we're in the battle garage here. You can see plenty of terrain in the background there for our fantasy tournaments, and a lot of medieval buildings will be ready when that age comes along. But let's get a look at our battlefield. So up top we have the the Scots deployed. Hope I don't get confused later. These are Scots, people. And then on the bottom are my Danes. For terrain, we've got 3 forests, boom, boom, and then a field in the middle, which basically counts as a forest. So it reduces your movement to short and also gives you light cover against shooting. On the lower right hand side of my board here, I've got some hard terrain, which never really gets into it in this battle, but it is there. So we can see our forces are deployed here, and we're kind of doing things pretty basic here. So one thing, this is an intro game for Mr. Matt, and we can explain a little bit more about that later. But my forces along the bottom here, I've got a point of warriors, 8-man. I've got another 8-man warrior block, and then I've got 4 Hearthguard with the full armor, and then I've got 4 Hearthguard with the Dane axes, and my warlord is hanging back. You can see there's some some large gaps between these units. That's because we rolled method C for the Clash of Warlords scenario. So no troops can deploy within medium of each other. And both of us ended up putting our warlords in the backfield. But yeah, up top, basically Matt's composition mirrors mine. He's got a unit of 8 warriors. He's got the warlord. He's got 4 Hearthguard, 8 warriors, then 4 Hearthguard in the backfield there. So at this point level, well, that's kind of interesting. So you could split up your warriors into smaller units to generate more saga dice, but if you take a couple casualties, they're going to stop generating. So not sure what the best layout is for the warrior blocks at this level, but that's what we went for. So let's get some close-up shots here of Matt's stuff. So you can see these guys look pretty good. They're nicely based, nicely base coated. They are dipped there. If you can see, if you got the dipper's eye, you can see the accumulation of the dip towards the bottom of the cloaks there and the shields. But overall looks pretty good. So we'll just look through his units here. His warlord's back there, his Hearthguard, and then his guys over there. And a sweet shot down the line there. On my side, we've got my Daneax Hearthguard looking at those guys across the field. And our camera slowly comes into focus to review these badasses for what they are. Here's a shot of my other Hearthguard unit from the front with their nicely painted shields. I should say that you can see some more pics of these guys in my Men of Wessex video, which I'll post a link to that below. And these are the warriors on either side here. The Fjord called up to do their duty. And then a shot from J. Jack's side of the field. And yeah, we're ready to do this. So let me lubricate the vocal cords. All right. So this is an intro game for Matt. So one thing is I didn't really look at his board when we were playing to try and react to it during my turn. Since I had a couple games under my belt, I thought that might make it a more even battle if I didn't know what was coming. And the Scots, I know, are well known for their defensive abilities and reactions. So hopefully those surprises can help balance out any of my skill I've accumulated with the second edition so far. So Matt's going first. The guy going first gets 3 dice, and he just loads up the Hold at Bay ability, which is going to be a mainstay for Matt throughout this battle. It's gain 3 defense dice. Is a melee or a shooting reaction. If you use a rare, you can re-roll it and place it on your battle board after you pop it, so that is pretty cool. I have to say, Mr. Matt did not roll hardly any rares. I think maybe towards the end of the game he had 1 or 2. It could have made a big difference here, but we shall see as we go along. So, of course, not a lot of activation abilities queued up because you've got that nice maneuver ability in the 2nd edition. So as long as you stay a foot away, start out more than a foot and stay a foot away, you can kind of move up. So his warriors and the rest of his forces are kind of moving up to face off against the Danes here. And yeah, not too much to say about that. We've got a maneuver sidle here, bringing the Hearthguard and warriors together. So I'm liking the looks of that. So my plan actually, if we're going to get into it, is to kind of use this field, which I don't know if we have any bigger picks here. There we go. This is his guys after the first turn, to use this field to kind of isolate his forces. So I mentioned in my last battle, I like to use my Hearthguard now for my strike force, and I've got both of these Hearthguard blocks, my warlord. I want to move him up, see if I can crush half of his army, and then kind of use this field to delay him until I can bring those forces back around. And we'll see how that works. All right, my go. You can already see I got loads of dice here, loving it. So each turn I'm going to be using the Anglo-Danes Noble Lineage activation pool combo. So there's really no reason not to use that. Basically, really quickly, using Noble Lineage, you can spend a dice, any dice, to change the facing on any other dice. So you change it to a rare, and then you can roll it in the activation pool. And worst case scenario, you end up with 2 dice that are basically similar to what you had before, but it basically gives you another shot at the rares, which I think we'll see that does kind of make a difference in this battle. But I've got Unforgiving loaded up here that will give an enemy an extra fatigue. Basically, you can't use it in that battle, but the following one. And then I've got Like Rocks, which is pretty awesome. Lets you reroll any defense dice. So with these queued up, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm going to start getting these guys moved up. Got the axes, my warlord, moving my warriors up here into the field. I'm doing a sideways maneuver on my warriors, so very handy ability for readjusting your battle line. Gotta love that maneuver. So I'm kind of bringing them back, see if I can lure them out and then bring them back and kind of delay like I talked about earlier. And then I do a double activation with my warlord to get them up to speed here. So both of these units of Hearthguard are over a medium away, so it's going to be a double activation for him to get in if he wants to attack me. And I do have those abilities queued up, so I'm feeling pretty good about my chances here. So we'll see what Mr. Matt has planned for us. Another shot of the board. Okay, so loving it. So one thing to take a look at is, look at all these dice here. So he actually hasn't rolled a rare dice. What happened was he had the Hold at Bay ability queued up from last turn. He had those warrior activations queued up from last turn. So he was just able to roll 5 more dice and add them to his board. So already, compared to first edition, the second edition, you have a lot more options with the ability to carry over abilities from turn to turn without penalty. So I think for the smaller games, definitely adds a lot of options. So Matt, he queued up counterattack and the reach ability. So we've already discussed Hold at Bay. Counterattack is kind of the natural ability to go along with that. It is a 2-dicer. but you gain 2 attack dice for each defense dice that you have. So hold it big gives you 3 defense dice, and then counterattack will give you 2 attack dice for each of those defense dice. So if you pop those at the same time, you're going to get 6 attack dice and 3 defense dice, which is pretty darn good. And one thing, these are kind of defensive abilities, but you don't have to be the defender in either of them, so you can charge and pop both of these. And then finally, reach. So this one, I told you I didn't look at the boards beforehand, but would have been a good idea to look at this one, because this is an awesome ability for the Scots. It's 2 dice activation. Activate all your infantry units without ranged weapons to shoot. So basically your normal warrior guys. So these guys may look a little chintzy in the armor department, but they're your standard troops basically. So the warriors have 4+ armor, and then the Hearthguards are 5-ups. So they don't actually have javelins. You might think they have javelins, but they don't. They just have normal spears. But with this ability, you can activate all your infantry units to make a shooting attack as if they had javelins. So that's pretty awesome. And as a bonus, they do not generate fatigue. So that is pretty amazing. And we're going to see that in action here as Matt moves his warriors up on my right flank, bringing his Hearthguard around as well, moving the warriors up on the left flank, moving his Hearthguard up, and then finally his warlord. So pretty much everybody is in range for a potential toss here. His warlord was slightly out, which that dude's chucking 4 shooting attacks now, which isn't too shabby. So he's equal in power to a unit of warriors in shooting. So yeah, definitely want to get that guy in if you can. And then the bombardment begins. So Matt popped the reach ability, and it did catch me out. I'm trying to think what I would do differently. I'm not totally sure. Maybe pop up some combat bonus dice to kind of defend against this. Basically, you don't want to necessarily stand off against the Scots, it would seem. You may want to hold back with some units and then go in one at a time. I'm not sure what the best strategy is there with this ability in play, but the warriors toss at my Danish guys, and they do actually have the same defense against shooting, so only one of them goes down. And then his 4 Hearthguard throw 4 shots at my warriors and take 2 of them out. And then on one of these, I did pop the Like Rocks ability, so I was re-rolling defense dice, but I don't think that it mattered at all. On the other side, it went a little better. So the Hearthguard were in range, and the warriors, maybe 1 or 2 guys were in range. And then his warlord was out, like I mentioned. And being in the field, we do get a better save against shooting. Counts as light cover, so they saved on 3s. But 2 of them still go down. So wasn't happy about that on my turn. However, we can pop over to the battle boards, and you can see basically how stacked I got there. I channeled my rage into rolling a bunch of rare symbols because there's a lot of stuff going on here. So every time you see these chips on here, basically it's a orders ability that's been activated. So you can see I've got the entire middle column locked out. Got some Hearthguard activations up top. And there's 2 chits up there on the activation pool. So that means I got two rares I cashed in for additional dice. And I chose to go with the exhaustion ability, which is this guy covered up here. And this is kind of the mainstay of the Anglo-Dane battle board from eras past. And it's still around. Still 2 rares. I went for it. I could have sunk one of those rares into Lords of War, but I chose to put it into Exhaustion here, kind of a classic ability. So it allows me to choose 3 units, and I can put a fatigue on each one of them. So here we are in my orders phase. I pop a fatigue on his Hearthguard on the left, his Hearthguard on the right, and then his warrior unit. So now they are set up for the Danish counterattack here. So it was pretty pretty lucky to get those rares, I will say. If I didn't get them, it would be pretty tough going here on my counterattack here, because he does have his defensive abilities lined up here. So we're going to get a good fight no matter what. So after mulling it over, I send my warlord in. And astute people might have noticed that in some of the previous shots, I was using a different warlord model. I was using my Anglo-Saxon warlord model with the sword and shield. And then halfway through the battle, I'm like, oh yeah, he's an Anglo-Dane. Got to get my Anglo-Dane with that big axe out there. So switched him up, got him on the board. He was just in range of these warriors. And because of that extra fatigue I put on them, I was able to reduce their armor to 3. Pop Crush the Weak, which gives me 4 additional attack dice. And then I think I popped Like Rocks as well. So I was re-rolling defense dice. I didn't want to have to lose any more of these Hearthguard. And then I believe Matt popped both of his abilities. So he had extra attack and defense dice. And so he was rolling 14 attacks versus my 12. He was hitting on 4s. I was hitting on 3s. And then he had some defense dice as well. And after all was said and done, I killed 7 of the 8 warriors. Pretty awesome. Couldn't get that last one, but they're reduced below 4, so they won't be generating any saga dice. And even though Matt had a bucket load of attacks, with my Like Rocks ability, I was re-rolling defense dice. So I was able to absorb 3 wounds with my fatigue, my resilience, and not have to sacrifice either of my warriors, or Hearthguard units here. So that was pretty awesome result. Would have been even better if I could kill that last guy, but I cannot complain about that. And then with that guy withdrawing, it actually opens the way for my Hearthguard with the Dane axes to get in and do some damage here. It's going to be a close fight on this one. So he's got 4 Hearthguards. So he has 8 attacks versus my 6 attacks. But he does have a fatigue on him. And I do pop Unforgiving, which gives him an extra fatigue. But I can't use it for this turn because I'm not thinking I'm actually going to kill them all. And I don't remember if I used the fatigue to make myself harder to hit or him easier to hit. But after all is said and done, 3 of his guys go down, 2 of mine, and a net gain here. So he's got, because of Unforgiving, he takes that extra fatigue at the end of the combat and then withdraws. And then there'll be a fatigue on my guy here, so even though it doesn't show it. And that is it for my turn. So doing some damage here on the right side, that's going to plan. On the left side, it's looking pretty gnarly here. The field will slow him down depending what he wants to do, but didn't really have any dice to load up my board or kind of get these guys out of the way. So we'll see what Matt can do. And I got an empty board, like I mentioned, on my left. And Matt didn't roll any of his rares, like I mentioned. So his boards look pretty sad throughout this battle. And he's activating 1 less dice than he was before. So he only gets 4. So he's got the Reach activated. He liked the amount of carnage he reaped last time. And put his Hold Up Bay ability for some defense dice as well. And then just 1 Hearthguard activation. So he's kind of sacrificing activations in order to shoot. But we'll see if it works out for him. He uses We Obey to move his Hearthguards up here. So one thing was they had a fatigue from the prior turn with the exhaustion. So he could have rested there, but for some reason he decided to move up, and maybe he wants to get into combat at some point. He moves his warriors up as well. And actually, now that I think about it, he probably used We Obey on the warriors and that Hearthguard dice on his Hearthguard there. And of course the warlord will get up as well. Everybody's in range now to throw their spears, and after all is said and done, he takes out 3 of the warriors, and that could have been a lot worse. He would have had 8 shooting attacks on the warriors out in the open, and then 4 on the warriors in the field here, who managed to save a lot of those attacks with their 3+. And that's it. So these 2 guys over here did shoot at my lone Hearthguard, but successfully scooted out of the way. So can't complain there. Back to me again. You can see had some rares, cashed them in, another full board here. One thing was, kind of chose to forego Lords of War. I could have put it on my Warlord to get rid of all his fatigue, which probably would have been a good idea. But for some reason I wanted to drop the hammer here and try to finish off some of his units. So I send in my Hearthguard with great zeal, and if we pop back, we've got a new ability that I use. So it's called Determination right here. It's gained three dice, either attack, defense, or a mix of the 2, and then an extra die for each fatigue the enemy has. So it worked out pretty good in this combat here, because that gives me 5 extra dice. My combat dice go from 2 to 4, that maxes out, and then I have 3 defense dice, which in the new edition they don't get capped. So hopefully I can kill that one guy there. He's got 2 fatigues on him. Everything's going to be stacked in my favor. And of course, it's the great whiff. Neither person hits, and he falls back. So we both take a fatigue, and that's the end of that. And then my Warlord, I was considering going after that warrior there, but I decided to rest and then start moving towards the middle of the field, because I think the action there is going to be decisive for this battle here. So I just got to start getting them over. It's quite a slog here. It's going to be 2 activations because of that field. So my own strategy is kind of working against me, isolating my troops on that side. I don't have any abilities or anything to help me move faster. So I leave that warrior for now. Hopefully my Hearthguard can take him out. And then I think I did move these warriors as well. I can't recall. But that is how it's looking. Once again, my warriors are left in the open here, but I do have some Saga abilities queued up for the inevitable combats here. So I do have, you can see, Unforgiving and Crush the Weak, and a little combat pool action. And then Matt is going to load up on his combo there, so he's foregoing the reach, the shooting abilities to go for combat, and he has 2 Hearthguard activations, and we'll see how that works for him. He sends in his lone Hearthguard there. He doesn't have any abilities to boost him up. Maybe he rested him. I don't remember. So maybe he had the slight advantage. But after that combat, boom, popping back. These guys are arch enemies now. This is the 3rd time they've tangled. So that is awesome. On this side, Matt sends in his warriors against my warriors. Now he has advantage 8-5 here and chooses not to use any of his Saga abilities. And even though he's got 8 attacks to 5, we both kill one guy, and then he peels off here. Unfortunately, that leaves me in range of his warlord, who then scoots in, and he doesn't use any of his abilities there, but with my fatigue, I'm a little easier to hit, and he wipes them all out. I was able to use Unforgiving to put an extra fatigue on his warlord, which is good. And my guys being wiped out will put extra fatigue on my warriors over here. And I have somewhat of an opportunity here. If we take a look at the larger battlefield, by his warlord advancing into combat, he has put himself out of short range of his Hearthguard, which he can bounce wounds onto. So now this warlord is basically on his own. He's got 2 fatigue, so he can absorb 1 more wound. But I have a unit of warriors right here, and it's my turn next. So let's see what I can do. And here is the board. Now I do add the shock activation, this one on the right here. This is a new one. So it's one uncommon dice. You can activate a unit to charge, and the charged unit cannot close ranks. So this ability is kind of handy in a couple different ways. One is the warriors cannot normally activate with an uncommon die. They can use a common or a rare. So this is another way to activate a warrior unit, as long as you're doing it for a charge. And then you have a little side benefit here that the charge unit cannot close ranks. So this will be particularly useful going against the warlord. The Scots warlord, he's just a regular warlord, so he can close ranks if he so chooses. And by popping this, he will be even more vulnerable. And then one thing that isn't marked down here, but I actually got exhaustion off once again. Had a couple rares, and I put the fatigue naturally onto his warlord, and then the two warrior units, or sorry, the war unit and the Hearthguard unit that are off the picture here. So looking pretty good. I was able to rest my warriors with an activation and charge them using the shock activation. So this is as good as it's going to get. His warlord has 3 fatigues on him, and I'm going to be going in with 6 attacks. Now, one thing was Matt didn't pop his Saga abilities last turn, which will come in handy here. So he's actually going to pop them now. He's going to gain 3 defense dice, which doesn't really work in my favor, and he's going to get the extra attack dice with counterattack. So he's actually pretty beefy right now. However, there's a couple things in my favor here. One is that he's exhausted before I went into combat, so he's going to be a -1 to hit my guys here if he does survive. So with the 3 fatigues on him, it's kind of a interesting proposition here. So if I were to leave those on there, as long as I got 1 wound through, I would kill him. But I only have 6 attacks here, and he's got 3 defense dice. So on average, 2 of those might hit. I could just as easily roll no 5+s, and he's going to have 3 defense dice. So if I don't take his fatigue down to make him easier to hit, it's going to be tough, I think, to kill him. So what I end up doing is taking his armor all the way down from 5 to 2s, and by doing that, I can use the Crush the Weak melee ability, which I wasn't able to use last turn because the enemies I fought didn't have armor of 3 or less. So that will increase my attacks from 6 to 10. And then after I do that, I can use Unforgiving to add a fatigue back onto the warlord. So that's a nice ability we're going up against enemy warlords. So that will basically kind of cancel an extra wound prior to anything going down. So I'm going to have 10 attacks hitting on 2s. He's going to have 3 extra defense dice, and he needs to I need to get 3 of those through. So I believe it's in my favor. I'm probably going to have 8 hits, and he'll block with 11 dice, and he needs to get just a crap load of 5+s, but still an outside chance. And then when he's coming against me, he does have 14 attacks with the counterattack ability, but he is hitting me on 5s. And let's see what happens. After all is said and done, I do indeed get the necessary wounds through by quite a large margin, and I only take 2 wounds in return, so maintain my integrity of the 4-pack. And you can see I put a fatigue on these warriors here, and actually with my exhaustion, I think I must have put a fatigue on one of the other units, but you can see there's 2 on this Hearthguard unit back here, and yeah, I put another one on the Hearthguard guy back there. So looking pretty good. At the end of my turn, I used basically most of my abilities to get that charge off to kill Matt's warlord. I do bring my Hearthguard over and rest my warlord once again. And it's not looking too good for the Scots right now. So 2 fatigue on the warriors. The big Hearthguard blocks stuck in the field, and then the single guy and the guy on the end. So Matt puts all of his dice into resting up. Doesn't roll any elks once again, no stags. And then I'm going to load up here. And first off, I'm going to retreat these warriors back. I don't have the advantage of numbers anymore on this side, so I'm going to get them out of dodge. And then I'm going to finish off these units here. If you kill a unit, you get an extra bonus point, so wiping these units out is extremely important because these saga battles are so close. So my warlord moves over, and I should, if I was a thinking man, I would put him against the enemy Hearthguard, and then I would have my Hearthguard take out the warrior. But I felt like the Hearthguards needed to resolve this issue, and I did have determination up to get a bunch of extra attack and defense dice. And what happened was I got 3 hits. Matt needed to save all 3. He got 1 hit against me, and I needed to save 1 of them, but I had 2 extra defense dice. So he failed all 3. I saved the one that I needed to prevent it from being an even trade, and I came out on top over there. So very pleased about that. And then, of course, the warlord goes in against the warrior and takes him out quite easily. And I decided to pull my Hearthguard. My little 2-pack is backwards as well. Don't want to go up against that 4-pack there. And that's kind of where the battle's going to end here. Matt continues to not roll a single rare, and that's basically he just rests his guys and faces the inevitable. We kind of figured it out. He would have to, in order to bring this battle back, he would have to have gone in against my warriors and basically killed them all without taking any casualties in return. And without a bunch of rares to get a fully stacked board, that wasn't likely. So he just rested up. My turn, roll some dice, but at this point he had to get going. So we just called it there. I think I was up 4 or 5 points on him by killing his warlord, and killing those extra couple units granted me the victory. So victory of the Danes over the Scots, and we thought that this boards played really well at 4 points because you could carry over abilities from round to round, and there's a couple times we forgot to use abilities, and first turn he loaded up some warrior activations, and then once I told him about the maneuver, he's like, oh, well, I guess these are kind of pointless. But when he went on his second turn, then he already had those warrior activations queued up. So it was kind of like he had 6 or 7 saga dice that he was generating. So yeah, it worked out really, really well. I think the kind of queuing up your board for future turns is a strategy that'll help you out in these 4-point games where you're not generating quite as many saga dice. But I think it's really cool. Still felt like we were playing full boards, and we had a full range of abilities that we could use. Now, one thing was Matt only decided to use just a few of these abilities here. Now, the 2 ones on the right are you need rares to activate, but he didn't use any of the other ones. So I'd be curious if those aren't particularly useful, or if you do play Scots, could he have used those to his advantage, or was he seduced by the easy numbers here on the right, which it's a good combo for sure, but I don't know if some of this other stuff would have helped him out. But yeah, good game overall. We're pumped for more of our 2nd edition battles, and Matt, here he is. He's a little bummed out, but on the inside, he's smiling. I just know it. So, all right. That's going to be it for this time. If you saw any rules mistakes, please post below. That's the good thing about putting these battle reports up, is folks are very quick to point out the errors, and it's a great way to learn. And sometimes I just forget to say stuff. So there may or may not actually be a mistake there. But please post below. If you have any ideas for tactics for Matt here, what he could have done differently, please post that. But otherwise, that's going to be it for now. We're definitely going to be doing more of these as we go forward. So thanks for watching, subscribing, all that stuff. And I'm going to catch you guys on the next one. See you next Thursday. Saga!